Morning, everyone. This is the Town Council Subcommittee Planning Matters meeting. Today is the 21st of October. We're in the school committee meeting room, and it is 10:35 in the morning. We have a full quorum here, and let's get this going. I think we're going to start with the minutes. We have a couple. September 23rd. Let's focus on that one first, and then I'll move to October 7th. Any comments or changes on that?
I have one comment, please.
Sure.
And it's on the second page. Well, okay, it looks like the third full paragraph down. Paragraph that starts with "the question was raised." It says the question was raised as to whether the subcommittee's recommendation to the planning board should include a required percentage of market rate housing units. I'm not sure whether someone spoke in error in that, but our recommendations are going back to town council.
Okay, that's correct. That's
okay.
correct. So I'll take a motion to edit that, or is there any other comments, so we can do it all as one full motion?
So moved.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll take that as a motion. Do I have a motion to approve the September 23rd minutes with the edit of replacing planning board with town council on, where noted in that section which begins with "the question was raised"? No edits. Any second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All. And one abstention. All opposed? Motion carries 4-0, one abstention. Just another side comment. We're ready to focus on the October 7th minutes. One comment is Ralph Page's name, and we missed it on the first September 9th, is spelled P-A-G-E, not P-A-I-G-E. So just as if those can be corrected as well, just for making his name correct.
That was the only comment I had.
That was the only comment. Just all right. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the October 7th minutes with Ralph's name being correctly spelled.
So moved.
Motion has been made and is seconded.
Second.
Motion made. Everyone second, thirded, and fourtheded. If there is such a word. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. And no abstentions. Carries 5-0. All right, let's get back into discussion of and let people know that I cannot go past 12:30. I have a 12:45 appointment, and I also understand another one of our members has an appointment shortly after. So let's see what we can do. All right. Unless I'm missing something, what I'd like to do is just go a little back and then forward. I'd like to start on page 5 of 7. We'll start just for simplicity's sake. Item 6, parking and circulation requirements. I believe 6.1, we agreed on 1 space per bedroom. The next one is, trying to help my memory on that one, was that 4? 4.5. 4.5 spaces per 1,000. And restaurants, 3 seats to keep it consistent with other requirements for restaurants in our zoning. Go ahead.
Before we move on, we also added above, just for clarification, that the parking shall be in accordance with the Town of East Long Meadow parking specifications, East Long Meadow zoning bylaw, section 5.61.
There you go. Nope, I just failed to.
I know that was referenced in the minutes as well, but
yes. Yeah,
you know.
no, it's in my notes, but okay. I just failed to mention it.
Okay, good.
Let's see. Now we go to item D, the planning board. Did we change it to require?
Require.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. All right. And let's go to E. Any thoughts on E? Basically what it says is reduction in parking requirements notwithstanding anything to the contrary herein, any minimum required amount of parking may be reduced by the planning board if the applicant can demonstrate that the lesser amount of parking will not cause excessive congestion, endanger public safety, or that lesser amount of parking will provide positive environmental or other benefits taking into consideration. thought I had here was on the word other benefits. And I just want to make sure other benefits are, other benefits can be financial wherewithal of a developer. So I'm just trying to see if we can sort of reel that in, what they mean by other benefits, and make sure it's not something that person comes in and says, here, well, this is a benefit.
Right.
Do we mean it other environmental benefits or other, what do we?
Still has to be approved by planning.
Right, but if somebody comes in and says, listen, I can't meet this, I can't meet this, I can't meet this, but I have other benefits, that's why I want to make this petition.
Should it be struck?
Well,
Yeah.
I think if we, the next sentence, which is an addition from other discussions.
Okay.
That, we're dealing with a mixed-use development, we're dealing with uses with the potential for changing. Something might be a stable use, and then you might have a higher volume traffic use coming in, that you might need some additional parking. And, we don't know what the future holds, we don't know what the planning board's gonna be talking about, and if this situation occurred, as long as the minimum required parking was shown on the plan, it can be in the form of green space until such time as they needed it, but the minimum spaces would be there if they needed it.
I get all that. I'm just trying to pretend I'm a developer, and I come in and I want to say, what are the standards that I can request the planning board to reduce the minimum required amount of parking?
But they would still be required to put the minimum in on the plan, even if they weren't making it asphalt.
Okay.
So, that gives
Right.
them more flexibility in
All right.
that situation.
So we're okay with the openness of other benefits?
I didn't have a problem
I think
with
so.
that.
I'm okay with it,
Okay.
like I said, because I still think it comes down to the planning board's decision, and there may be benefits that we're not thinking of.
So should we put down other benefits?
Based on the uses.
Other benefits to the community, or to East Long Meadow?
No.
No? You think
I'm good with it.
fairly clear that that's what's inferred there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right, cool.
However,
Yes.
that the language be added,
All right.
provided that the difference between the minimum required parking and the amount requested be designated on the plan as future parking and left as green space.
Okay. So in other words, that space can also be,
It cannot be developed.
it can't be developed. and
Exactly.
it'll
Well,
be-
that was the whole
Right.
point.
Okay.
That was what,
Good.
is that okay?
I'm getting a little look from the audience here. So, in other words, if a developer comes in and says, I want 300 parking spaces, but I really, but the zoning calls for
350.
350. The plan can show it'll be designed for 350, but the actual, if allowed by the planning board, the actual build-out will be 300,
Basically the asphalt.
but the other spot will be reserved for future parking
In green space.
in green space.
On which side of the 60%?
I think it's gonna be, it's not gonna affect the 60, it'll be 60 plus. Right, you have 60% open, right?
No, 60% purview.
Oh,
60%
and
paved.
pervious.
Lot
okay.
coverage
Right,
and-
right.
right.
What we're basically saying is if you're required to put in 400 spaces, that's per plan. But you say, hey, I think we can get by with 300, let's not asphalt the other 100. We're okay with that, as long as it's left for future. In case in the future you realize, our calculation was off, instead of the 300, geez, maybe we need 350, but we still don't need the 400, as long as there's still room for the whole 400.
So you're not reducing them at all?
Not reducing the required amount, we're reducing the ability of you to maybe not asphalt it because you may not need to.
Yeah, it's
Basically,
a reduction without a benefit.
except for the cost.
Cost is asphalt, that asphalt's cheap.
Cost is preparation.
What would be the
Preparation,
benefit?
it's the base, it's the
Well,
asphalt.
the true benefit to reduced parking is it doesn't exist at all.
But we
and-
don't know the uses at that location in the future. I mean, that's the whole
You
reason.
can have
Right, but writing it that way, you're completely tying the hands of the planning board to say, regardless of whatever information comes into the board to say, this is the parking demand, and this is what it needs to be, and it's only gonna be 300. Writing the bylaw in that manner says, regardless of whatever good information you give us, it still needs to be designed for 350. And you can't get any benefit from your good information, from your good design, from your good mix of uses, because we're gonna tie your hands and make you design 350. And if you design 350, you're gonna build 350. You're just,
I don't agree.
Yeah, I mean, we've had situations in my planning board days, and you guys, like we've seen projects like Center Square and so forth, where they have the overflow parking on the side. You see Stop and Shop when Edwards was thinking of coming in and so forth, about, the extra parking on the side not being, I think if it's that additional green space, you get the benefit, and again, you say asphalt is cheap, but then again, maintaining and plowing the asphalt's an extra benefit. You're not having to plow the extra snow and so forth on there. So I think there is a benefit, and it's just basically designing it, because again, I have to remind everybody, and those our regular viewers know, we are not voting on a project.
Right.
We're voting on a proposed mixed-use bylaw. However, you can't ignore the project and the elephant in the room, and the project is, the impetus was the developer going to the planning board, going to the council, going to us. So,
John, I mean, shouldn't this really be really something reserved for the planning board and for them to decide and for them to look at? They're the ones that are gonna be ruling on this specific project.
And we're concerned
Yeah,
what
and we're
future planning boards, who those planning board
right.
people are gonna be.
yeah, you come out and you build a project, and your first instance is a
At some
low
point in time, you
use.
gotta have faith in your planning board.
Well,
That's
It's
not a
faith.
discussion.
It's not a
Jane.
question,
Right.
Jane, I totally disagree with you on that one. We have total faith in the people, committed to serving the town. Our concern is that if we're gonna use your project, you're on Chestnut Street, and if there's a mistake in parking, and it comes up where visitors and stuff start parking on Chestnut Street because there's not enough parking, there's no overflow area built in that the planning board can come in and say, guys, you know what, you miscalculated.
Don, if I may, through the chair.
Please.
It's easy to solve this. Screw cutting any parking out, keep it the way it is.
That's a thought too.
If it's gonna come down to that,
Well, that's what you're doing, so.
I mean, just keep it the same, instead of, I trust the planning board, the current planning board and future past planning boards. But instead of bickering over this, it's very simple, just keep it as it is.
So get rid of the reduction in parking requirements, leave it.
I'm not sure.
I think having that additional language that Marilyn was just, was talking about, provided that the difference between the minimum parking and the amount requested is designated on the plan as future parking and left as green space, I support that. I think it gives the planning board and future and other developers the opportunity. They just have to design that for overflow, because it would be a nightmare to have that overflow on a Maple Street or a Chestnut Street or a Allen Street or another street that has high traffic flows like these places do.
then I think it's important, I'd make a motion that we include that in with our recommendation,
Okay. This is the provided language?
the provided language.
All right, we have a motion to include that into our recommendation.
I think
Go ahead.
some discussion though.
Please.
I don't think that's a great idea, because I think it's just setting another artificial limit. If we already have these percentages on what impervious surface is allowed in building coverage and green space, are we effectively lessening the amount that they could possibly build if they ever wanted to reduce the parking space?
No,
No.
I think it's conversely. We give the developer an opportunity to say, here's what you require space-wise, but I really, honestly, because of this business, this is a 9 to 5 laundry, dry cleaners, but this restaurant is only open 5 o'clock till so-and-so, so we're gonna see, because of who we have out here, we think we don't need to pave this entire area. So then we come out and our concern is, well, what if you guessed wrong? You know what I mean? What if you guessed wrong? And this bakery ends up becoming a restaurant. And then all of a sudden there's more demand. I can cite one example from 1997, Dunkin' Donuts. When it first came in here, the planning board approved it as a bakery. And the brand, even they got rid of the word donuts. Now it's now Dunkin'. It's all intents and purposes, a restaurant. So my point is that having the opportunity for a developer to come in and say, we understand these are the requirements, but because of the nature of our businesses, we don't necessarily feel that this parking lot paved as is. But if they guessed wrong, like Dunkin' Donuts, and they need that parking space, the spaces are available as opposed to having these overflow parking over on Chestnut Street or any other of our busy streets that projects like this come in.
Or the planning board denying that particular
Yeah.
occupancy because it's the demand would be too great for what's available.
And that sounds okay if we anticipate that the parking is never going to be satisfactory and that we're always going to need more in this reserved space. But what happens if they did guess correctly, which I would anticipate that a good chunk of the time, hopefully they will. Then we're going to have all this.
Green space.
Then you have
Right,
more-
yeah,
then
and there's
you have more
there's
open green
nothing
space.
wrong with passive recreation.
No, but that's to
and-
the disadvantage of mixed use, though. If we're trying to maximize the amount of stuff that we can put on one parcel, as opposed to having just stuff everywhere, and I don't think that that's
Well, there's
helpful.
the risk rewards, that we're looking at. The risk is if we trust the developer to say, this is going to be the numbers, and this is the statistics, and it turns out not to be correct, and now you don't have available parking, then you have a situation where you're going to be putting public safety at question because you have a successful restaurant. I mean, one of the restaurants they mentioned in the early, and again, we're not voting on this project, I have to keep prefacing, but the name was out there, was Emerald's. So if an Emerald's comes in, it becomes a very popular restaurant. And we just assumed it's going to be no different than a local coffee shop. Then we're going to be in a pinch and for not enforcing the 3 per seat requirement.
But
But Don, I think you have to remember that inherently within the mixed use, right, is that you're gonna have, so even if you do have that situation where you have a busy restaurant, let's think about when their busy times would be, right, like 5 to 10, right, like in theory, right? And you're gonna have professional buildings or professional offices in there that close at 5, so they're not gonna have.
Right, so that would be the argument to make, but if the
So
professional.
that's the argument to the planning board. So
Right.
you have to give that planning board that ability to render that decision to reduce the amount of spaces if they don't think it's gonna be needed. And again, still you're here,
Right.
I agree with Connor that you're gonna be tying any developer's hands in the planning board's hands, and not developers, but the planning board's hands in anything, so you still have to make
Yeah,
room
no,
for
I-
this space.
I have to respectfully disagree on that because I think we have parking rules, unless we want to revisit the entire parking for restaurants. We have to revisit the parking for offices and so forth. We want to revisit those as a whole, in total, that's one thing, but we're not. We're trying to take our existing parking and say, listen, this is what's required for these type of uses, all right? If you want to request a reduced amount, then then if the planning board agrees, that's fine. But in case you're wrong, there's emergency parking space available for development if necessary. Otherwise, it can be green space. You don't have to plow it, you don't have to line it.
I understand what you're saying.
And I guess my question becomes, what side of the 60% impervious limit does that extra parking sit on? Inside the 60 or 60 plus?
I would say it would sit probably inside your 60.
So you're providing zero benefit.
We're
You're
providing
saying-
not
you're saying
plowing.
You're saying
So through the
billable
chair,
parking.
there's been a motion made.
Okay, any
You
other
call for
discussion
a
on it?
second?
I'll
There
call.
shouldn't be discussion actually before a second.
Okay, after the second. The motion made, do we have a second on it?
Second.
All right, motion made, second. Any further discussion on this? No?
All right, quick
All right,
question.
go ahead.
Through the chair. With this, any project will be built in phases. to me, it's got to be an advantage to the town, but it's also got to be an advantage to the people that are gonna live there and use the
Right.
project. No, we don't want too much development on one, we don't want a square peg in a round hole. But what is the true advantage to adding this?
For the future, because there's no.
We keep talking about the future,
Well,
but
we
we're
don't
also in the
know.
present.
You know, we don't know, we've been, you know, the original
So-
proposal said 5% commercial. And, you know, we know that that's not within the scope of this discussion. And so we're looking at what, I mean, we're hoping that this location is gonna be Elm and Elm. We're hoping that this location is, if it's gonna work in East Long Meadow, this is the spot where it's gonna work. But we don't know who's coming. We don't know if we're gonna get an Aldi. We don't know if we're gonna get a Trader Joe's. We don't know if there is a higher demand use out there that's gonna come to this location. I think the additional words that we're proposing, all it does is it says, you know, we're gonna work, the town's gonna work with whatever's out there. However, if the needs change, we have to be able to meet those needs. And if you come in with, I mean, parking has been an issue since the original proposal. And they were looking at different types of vehicle usage. Uber was brought up in the original. You know, all of that is out there, I understand that. But this is also East Long Meadow.
Is there a clause or through a special permit, if that extra parking isn't needed once the project is close to being completed, can they take some of that parking and turn it into business or residential?
I'd rather turn it into open space.
I'd rather be in Key West too, but we're
No,
sitting,
I'm
I mean,
serious.
I'm just here asking, trying to get both sides here so that we're being fair to both East Long Meadow and
Yeah.
any development that comes in.
The percentages are gonna limit you on lot coverage no matter what.
Okay.
So through the chair, we have a business right now in Benton that the planning board, through their wisdom, said, you're basically a warehouse, it requires, because of the size, this amount of parking, which is double what you'll probably ever use. So show it on the plan, only asphalt half of it. If you ever need it, it's there. They've never needed it. It's not asphalt. They literally have half of the impervious surface, the rest is green space. It works. Like I said, it's one of those where I'd rather see it as green space than this huge sea of asphalt that's never used. I think that's really what the language goes to.
Right.
Okay.
Why are we gonna have you asphalt something which may or may not ever need to be used? If it does need it, if that business changed, and all of a sudden it was a bustling business that had 3 shifts in and out and people, they have the space there to add the parking as they need it.
Through the chair, I think unintentionally you might be making it easy for them to just asphalt the entire thing, because, you know, thinking from the other perspective, rather than go through the time and energy of coming back and forth, well, we actually need more space, now we gotta pave it. It would just be easier from the get-go if they paved the whole thing and said, forget about it, we don't have to worry about this ever again. And that's not what we want either.
But if their numbers are correct from the beginning, then they'll never have to.
Right. And I also would like to add that, you know, we're using, it's a mixed-use formula. We're gonna be having, you know, now granted, we brought the restaurant formula back to what the bylaw requires, minimum standards. We brought the formula back to the business, planned business development, which is 4.5 spaces. Commercial is generally 5 spaces per 1,000. Retail is 6 spaces per 1,000. So they're getting, because we recognize that there's going to be shared parking, they're getting a benefit from that alone. And at some point, you know, we've seen uses come and go in Center Square. We've seen times where the parking is overflow and sometimes we don't. But that's the nature of doing business. If they choose to put a whole parking lot in, because it's the minimum requirement, that's up to them. But the town is offering them an opportunity to not have to do that if they feel at the beginning, at the onset, it's not necessary. That would be my.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
Okay,
Okay.
call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4 yes and 1 nay. Okay, let's go with the next section, which is I, which is still part of E, but shared use of off-street parking spaces serving others having peak use demands at different times. All right, trying to make,
None of this matters anymore.
yeah,
You just took all this flexibility and mixed use and just threw it up.
impact of the parking requirements of the physical environment of the affected land or the adjacent lots, including reduction of green space, destruction of significant existing trees and other vegetation, destruction of existing dwelling units, or loss of pedestrian amenities along public ways, and such other factors as may be considered by the planning board. Any comments on those criteria?
I think they're okay.
Okay. Any other, do you have any comments? None. All right, let's move to design review. Item 7, the design review committee, or the planning board acting as the design review committee, shall review applications for all actions that are subject to the provisions of this section and shall make recommendations to the developer prior to the public hearing for the plan review. As to the conformance with the design standards established within section 7.4.0 design review, the planning board shall retain overall responsibility and authority for design review approval. The planning board may also employ consultants to assist in design review at the expense of the applicant. I saw one comment that was like prior to and within. Is that
And the
thoughts on
reason
that?
why, because it says prior to the public hearing, there's always comments going to be made within the public hearing, and it was just,
Oh, I see, within, and
Right.
within the
right,
project.
right.
Yeah, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And within added, okay. So I don't have to call both, so and within, okay. All right. Item 8, dedicated common open space requirements. A minimum of 20% of the parcel shall be dedicated open space and not subject to development in the future.
So, from the
Okay.
research that, through the chair, from the
Please.
research that Connie did in coming up with
yeah, we
definitions.
talked,
Yeah.
we're gonna try to get that on the agenda, so if you wanted to talk
Yep,
about
you
it
could-
now.
you could- yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Because she had mentioned that, she had recommended that we change the term, open space to
Right.
green space in this section. But then that would also cause the inverse, I think, in section 4.6, that it would go, I forget which word.
So we're going back now?
He says that by changing the language in Connie's recommendation to green space here,
Right.
that will have an effect on section 4.6,
Because then.
because we were talking about defining green space, 4 point, right?
Yeah. 'cause
Minimum 40%?
Yeah, minimum 40% green space would then
Right.
become minimum 40% open space, I think.
She indicated that the planner recommends revising the text, change from green space to open space under 4.6 of lot coverage. So in other words, under lot coverage, she's recommending maximum 60% impervious, 40%, maximum 40% building coverage, minimum 40% open space rather than
Okay.
green space. That's what she's recommending. And then she indicated that she would add the definitions to open space and green space in section 8 of the definitions.
All right, and so by going back into 8 again, we have the 40% minimum open space, and then a minimum of 20% of the parcel shall be dedicated green space?
And I
With a
wondered-
definition?
I wondered about that because if I recall, in 4.7, it talks about landscape buffers.
Right,
Rear 25, side 25, and we added front 25.
we did, yeah, we got that.
And then that's good. You know, I know how these projects look, and there will be landscaping throughout. There's always, in plans that we've dealt with previously, there's always been a minimum of green space throughout the proposals. So if the open space becomes I switched my sheet again, 40% open space, and 20% of that becomes green space I have no problem with that. Based on dedicated
Yeah, so we-
common
so-
open space requirements.
And we need to have in the definitions how we, green space versus open space.
And Connie included that as well.
All right.
But that would be part of, she's saying it doesn't have to be part of this document, that'll be part of the definition.
Now, they use the term common open space requirements. There's nothing to be read into that, right? We're not talking about common space that has a dedicated purpose, like parks and ball fields and things like that, to be used in common with all the people who are in that place? Or do they just mean, I'm just curious why the word common was added as opposed to dedicated open space requirements?
I'm not sure.
How is it? All right, we'll make, you have a thought on it?
I don't know, I didn't read that far into the title.
Well, I kind of like flagged it to me, and it talked about common, and I wasn't sure if it's like if you have, like you have a condominium, all right, there's ownership, and you own a percentage of the common area. So this could be, is that suggesting that this space is used as common area for, purposes like recreation, more instead of just rough green land out there, but some other purpose?
Why don't we take a moment and look at, because Connie in her communication to us, she says open space, natural area open space includes woodlands, fields, wetlands, streams, banks, flood streams, and unique geologic formations. An open space is land set aside for buffer zones, green belts, and protection of environmentally sensitive areas. In relationship to the built environment, open space may be a pocket park, plaza, or small area adjacent to a sidewalk. Open space should be highly visible, adjacent to or bisected by the mainstream of pedestrian flow, provided ample seating, shade, and weather protection. Offer a focal point such as a fountain or a gazebo. So she gives this definition of open space, which she took from the city of Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm believing that she wants to use this definition. And I will read that now. Open space is meaningful outdoor space for passive or active use. It includes, but is not limited to, settings for development, recreation areas, landscaping, hardscape, water features, seating areas, plazas, gazebos, sidewalks, and trails. Open space does not include parking areas or parking lot landscaping. So that's the definition that she would like to put in definitions, which would be part of a bylaw change.
So what I'm trying to determine is whether in this, and when we're talking to the term open space and common open space, when you start putting in fountains and start doing things of that nature where you're trying to attract people to engage and experience and commune with nature and this kind of stuff, versus just raw, undeveloped land as a buffer and so forth. So is green space just like raw, just trees and unmaintained, just land out there that's not going to be developed, and common open space is purposeful open space that we want to attract people to actually enter into and engage and appreciate?
I think it's a combination of both.
That's what I was trying to sort out.
Because when I was looking at the EPA's definition, it was slightly different in that it was like open space is any open piece of land that is undeveloped, that is, has no buildings or other built structures, and is accessible to the public.
Right.
It can include green space, but it's not
Right,
necessary.
right.
So I would think open space is more, it could be undeveloped, it could include green space, but the green space itself would be more like.
But their definition is to allow, it's certainly, so, like having woods but then creating a path through the woods. Is there a difference? Is one green space and the other common open space because you have the path engaging people to come in? Is there, as you mentioned in that definition, does it want the public to engage in it into the open space or from afar and leave it totally undeveloped and raw and so forth? That's what I was just trying to get clear on that definition.
I think that we're getting caught up in a little minutia here.
I just thought the word common and the title is kind of what I read black.
I don't have any problems, we're jumping back and forth between sections.
Right, because changing one
Right,
changes the other,
right.
as Connie pointed
A
out.
minimum of 20% of the parcel shall be dedicated open space and not subject to development in the future. To me, that is included in this 40%. I don't think that's additional to the minimum 40%
Okay.
of the, otherwise you'd be talking 60%.
Yeah, no, it's definitely included.
So I don't know why we even need that.
You know what I'm gonna do?
I think it was because as it is now, like in section 8, right, a minimum of 20% of the parcel should be dedicated to open space.
Right.
And the open part is fine, because I think that's less restrictive. But in the lot coverage section 4.6, if we say minimum 40% green space.
That should be open
That
space.
seems to make it sound like it has to be.
Right,
Like
right.
developed into some sort of
And
landscaped.
that's where
thing.
Connie's
Yeah.
definition would come in, and I agree with that.
So these two, if we rework the word open to, so do we, on 8, do we want it, should it say green space or open space? Item 8.
It depends on what you're looking for, if you want it to.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
What's the,
I don't
think
think it's
green's up.
necessary, to be honest with you.
okay, got some music going.
60%.
Jane, do you remember what the reasoning is behind this, or John, or Joe?
Well, I think they build, so you have 60% of the parcel is impervious.
Right.
Of that 60%, then in that 60%, 40% is buildings. So you have 40 and 60 total. Then the other, that's the developed side of the world, if you will. Then the other side of the world was 40% is green, and of that 40, half of it is open space that's you did something with, or that's contiguous and it's common, and as opposed to the parking lot island. The parking lot island is part of your 40%, but that's not part of your 20%.
Right, right, right.
So I think you kind of took the 100% and you carved it up. You said, okay, this 60% is going to be paved and roof, and that's split up into buildings and parking. And then this 40% is going to be green, and that's split in half between green that's just interspersed throughout the development and 40% of open space that's contiguous, that you can do something with, that serves a what did she say, a higher purpose or
Sounds like we're in Star Wars. Jeez.
Watch out. Get ready for the ride. I don't know if the people at home watching can hear the background noise here.
Listening to what John just said, if I followed it correctly with the interruption, if we take the minimum 40% green space and change that to open space,
Yeah,
what does it do to a minimum of 20% of the parcel shall be
Great
dedicated
minds.
to open space? Should we
20%
change
of
that to
40.
green space?
It's within the 40.
I know it's within the 40, but it's all open.
thought.
And there's no.
But using Connie's definition, excuse me, through the chair.
Right,
Connie's definition is saying it's not a parking lot island.
right.
The 40% is for the parking lot islands too. So you can't have the open space
Yeah.
number come all the way up to the green number. There has to be green that's not open space. If you're gonna use this enhanced open space definition of
Right.
its plazas and things, et cetera. And by that definition, you could have open space that is impervious, if it's a plaza, if it's a fountain, if it's those types of things. But again, you're moving between different types of uses. I think the way it's written is correct. I think it's the way it works. It's the semantics of.
So you're, I mean, if I may,
Please.
through the chair, So the research that Connie did in Scottsdale, Arizona, with trying to change the definition, perhaps that complicates things a little bit in this particular situation?
It's okay as long as you leave green as green and open as open.
And just, I'm saying through the chair, it's taking that number of 100% and then saying 60 and then 40, so how do you work with those numbers?
Right. So,
All right, go.
so where were,
So going back to 4.6, do we want, so leave it as green space?
Green space.
right.
Leave it, okay.
Which
Okay
we
with that?
said, which we had done, and then we were gonna define green space in section
All
8,
right,
which,
so keep it the way the planning board presented it, minimum 40% green space, and now we're going back to 8. Does that change the green space or leave it open space?
I think you need to, I'm sorry for it, but you need
No,
to
it's all right.
define to say within the green space, which should be 20%.
Within the open space,
Within the
or
open
the green
space, I'm
space?
sorry, yeah.
Okay.
There should be 20% green space.
So what, just
Wait, I'm now,
a recommendation or thought, why don't you take, instead of, you take 8 out, right, and just put right underneath, in 4.6, you add D, 20% open space.
does that, well,
Like under, or maybe like a C.1, right, or maybe A should be A, and then A1 should be max 40% building coverage,
Or just
then B,
continue.
and then, do you know what I mean? So you can see that it's within the,
Under
Does that make
4.6,
sense?
just continue with C.
So you would be
Minimum
like
40% green space.
max 60 and
with
then A1 and then
20%
minimum 40
of that being
here's,
open space.
you know,
all right,
sub,
I
like
still
a
want to
sub
see the
thing.
definitions of it, till we have it,
Right.
so, all
Okay.
so
right.
back to 4.6 lot coverage, minimum 40% green space, 20% of which will be
open space.
open space.
I think that clarifies some
Strike
things.
And strike 8?
Right,
We all good with that?
Yes.
and then just add your
Sense.
definition of green and open.
Okay, needs, needs. Yeah, because I want to definitely see the definitions before we do our stuff. Need definition.
Yeah.
Green and open, to make sure we're all on the same page on that.
Okay, and we're gonna strike
8. C 4.6 C. Okay. Any other comments?
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, now we're going to community association.
So,
Okay, community association shall be established requiring membership of each unit owner in the mixed-use development. The association shall be responsible for the permanent maintenance of all communal water and sewer systems, common open space, recreational, and thoroughfare facilities. I think we need to define that. An association agreement shall be submitted with the special permit site plan review application guaranteeing continued maintenance of such common utilities, land and facilities, and assessing each unit a share of maintenance expenses. Such agreement shall be subject to the review and approval of the town attorney and the planning board as part of site plan review. Okay, on this one. Now,
The only question we had was what's the thoroughfare facility?
Roads, sidewalks?
That's what I thought, why don't we say? Should we define it?
including but not limited to roads and sidewalks?
I don't know.
Roads, parking lots, sidewalks?
Yeah. You know, I hate to put all those words in there if we all understood what thoroughfare facilities meant.
So maybe we create a definition. No, you know what? Let's create a definition of thorough, add to our
That's
definitions.
right, yeah.
Yeah, add definition. Thorough facilities. Okay, now, I'm familiar with condo associations, but here we have a real hybrid situation because if the development is part, I mean, using this as an example, is the entire residential going to be a condominium of which the developer is retaining the certain residential units under their ownership to rent it as apartments? Or is this some type of condominium section, non-condominium section, business section? I just need to know logistically, because you have, if you're creating a condominium, well, Chapter 183 obviously addresses that. So using you as an example for the sake of this discussion, how would this apply in your proposal, John?
You would have a property owners association. I don't know whether that works in 183 or not. We'll have to figure that out. But basically, each entity would be a member of the association, and you develop a way of assessment, whether it be acreage or units. Acreage usually works better because it counts for parking and things like that. And everything has, you have common maintenance of everything together. If you have an ownership section, like a townhouse section, they'd be able to self-govern if they want to plow their own snow or hire their own landscaper. You always get the person when that association takes over that's the smartest guy in the room, and he thinks he can cut the grass better. Great, cut the grass better. Have at it. But that's typically how it'd be done.
Okay, so
That's how our other mixed-use developments are run.
yeah, I get that one. That was one of my checkbox head scratchers on that one. Here's why. I was just trying to think of, because familiar with both condominiums and also with common area assessments that you have owning a business. We rent. One of my businesses we rent. We share with a restaurant, with a Dunkin' Donuts and other places like that. And clearly, and they, we have 23% of the space. They have 23% of the space, but clearly their impact is far greater than running a travel agency. And so the question then is going to become is, if you have a spot that takes regular deliveries of tractor trailers and so forth and more impact, they're going to be, whatever their percent of ownership is of it, that will be their voting share as well, but not in terms of impact, right? It's just going to be a percentage of ownership. So landowners, homeowners will be the same as a business owner as a function of how much of the percent of ownership they have, right?
Typically, yes.
All right. How do you find it works on a practical level? Let's say you have an Applebee's, and in terms of attending association meetings or voting, is it all done by proxy or?
Yeah, they don't. The commercial doesn't care.
They don't care?
No. They don't. They just don't.
Yeah, but in the sense of, if I were a commercial developer, owner in there, my common area fees would all be lumped in within this, right? It's not a separate common area fees.
Well, certain common area fees, you let each property owner self-maintain certain things. So, for example, that commercial property owner or that commercial business owner, the Dunkin' Donuts that's in there, they can have their own, commercial dumpster that's going to be their own recycling and waste facility. That's separate from the residential, so that doesn't get mixed in. They'll have their own light bill. They'll have their own, parking lot maintenance,
Right.
that it's plowed, etc. So you let the people self-maintain. The things that get maintained together are the common open space, the stormwater facilities, and all the utilities. So what makes it nice is you can then do all of your utility and access easements and agreements just by an agreement. I don't need to be drawing lines all over the map. I can just say everybody can go everywhere and have at it. Or I can say on this residential development there's a gate and we're going to operate it that way, but they're all out in the commercial area or whatever the case may be.
So back to the 480 units. I think I remember from a previous conversation that basically the goal is, let's sell condominiums until we get to the point where we cannot. We break even, and then we'll manage the rest.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is more of a question for Jane. I'm not sure, but is the entire overall project going to be condominiums where East Long Meadow redevelopment is going to be an owner of X percentage of them, or are they going to be only a portion gonna be because that's a whole.
No, a portion of,
We're
a
starting to
portion,
get
No,
into
because
sites and
No,
site-specific.
this is
instead of a
important to me
bylaw.
because the community association may be going into associations that have to be created to create a condominium in Massachusetts. And so we might have some kind of like issues, and that's
And
important.
wouldn't that be our town attorney to
Not-
consider that, considering it's gotta pass his muster?
Well, then
And,
we'll
I
raise
mean, This is a
that.
bylaw, this may not even affect them, this may affect a golf course somewhere that decides to do it.
Yeah.
I think we're just getting in a little too deep for our bylaw purposes.
I
I
respectfully.
do agree with you,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I just know
think
that,
in this
okay,
situation,
if you're building you're gonna have association upon association. If you're building a condominium, you have to have a condominium association. That's just you have to get it, to make it a condominium. So we're gonna have a condominium association, a community association, all right, as well. And that's what I wanted to find out, is if there's condominiums, those two are gonna have to mesh together. And I think maybe we'll just, I'll maybe get permission to talk to Kevin Menard on this one, but I think it's important not to let this thing pass,
23A.
to let this pass without addressing
John,
it.
say it again, because I'm
All right.
trying to follow.
Okay, what we have is, we have a requirement for a community association. All right? You have 480 residential units.
Right.
How many of them are gonna be created as a Massachusetts condominium?
That I don't know.
All right, and that's the question. So we're gonna have an association under that, let's say a third, 40%. And then the rest are gonna be privately held by East Long Meadow redevelopment, and they're going to rent them out under their property manager. All right, so what I want to find out is, how does the association mesh with a condo association if a condo is being created? I'm just curious how those two mesh, because you have two associations. You're gonna have condo fees for the condo association, which is required. As we know, a condo lien is a higher lien than even a mortgage. So you have that, and then you have non-condo, who are all contributing to this community association. So you're gonna have a double association. The condominium association is gonna be a
Wouldn't the owner be part of that condominium association?
right, there'll be a master association.
Yeah,
So
they
they
will.
would be too, so it'd all be
Yeah.
one association.
Well, that's what I wanted to be clear on, because now you're having non-condo owners part of this association.
No, you'd have, because East Long Meadow redevelopers would be the owner.
Well, that's my point, that's why I wanted to go with. Let's say you have 480 units. Are all 480 units gonna be Chapter 180, a condominium? And if that's the answer is yes, whereas the owner will be East Long Meadow redevelopment, selling to you, to me, to, all of us. And then you go, we've hit our number. The rest of our units, are they gonna be condominiums?
I think if they're gonna
that are
elect a
be rented?
condo, I think if they're gonna elect a condo, then it's gonna be, the whole thing's gonna be a condominium.
That's where,
association. Right? No?
Well, no, you don't want the rental units to be
No, they would
condo
be, you would be the
units.
owner.
Right,
Yeah, because here's the problem. If the rental units are condos,
they're gonna run afoul of their
FHA and so forth,
Oh, okay,
you can't
gotcha.
get any.
Gotcha.
So that's what I need to find out. Are we, right now, if you have condos,
Gotcha.
and again, we're not voting on the project.
I know.
But if we're gonna be moving this forward, and
How do
right
they
on its face, since I
interact?
heard the C word, condominium, condominiums by statute have to have a condo association. How does that mesh with the community association? Because unless they say there's no condos, I don't know how you're gonna say, it's all gonna be apartments. Then that's fine, that's cool, then this all makes sense. But now you have an association layered on association. So maybe we'll table this conversation, I'll try to get some
well,
answers.
I think for the bylaw purposes, I think you have it right. You're saying have an association, we want the association to deal with all the common maintenance, we want the association to deal with all the utilities, et cetera.
Right.
And we want the ability for the town to, if the association goes bust, that the town doesn't get hurt. I think you've done all of your town cover your bases stuff. The mechanism of it is something that we're gonna have to figure out with the.
Yeah, no, once you get into condominiums,
And the town attorney. Condominium, again, we were told earlier, is a form of ownership. Single units, stuff like that is
But you
It's
can't,
not a form of
whether you have a
ownership.
condominium of 3 units or 3,000 units, in order to create a condominium, there's a procedure and a process under the statute. And it's compelling. You have an association and a percentage of common area ownership of the association. So you may own unit 1
No, I
and a
understand
0.5% owner. How is that calculated when we have a condo mixed with a non-condo? What would happen, I'll pick on Elmcrest. Let's say somebody comes into Elmcrest and let's say they want to build a Starbucks. We know it's not allowed, but let's say hypothetically it was. How does that impact a owner's common area percentage with this project coming in? It gets kind of muddied.
I think that's an attorney's question.
All right, well, that's why
Not a bylaw question.
I will skip this. I don't think we should.
I think the bylaw did its job.
I think the bylaw's done its job.
And
And again, if you want to table it and then do
Please.
some more research, I have no problem.
I'm gonna, with Kathy's permission, Council President Kathy Hill, I'm gonna ask permission to talk to our town attorney and see, what my thoughts are in it as well. So I'll table that. I'll take responsibility of getting answers for that one.
So hopefully by next meeting, we can have.
You got it.
Great, thank you.
All right, now we're 9.2, such agreement shall provide that in the event of the community association fails to maintain the common facilities in reasonable order and condition in accordance with the agreement, the town may, after notice to the association and public hearing, enter upon such land and maintain it in order to preserve the taxable values of the properties within the development and to develop the common land from becoming a public nuisance. The association agreement shall provide that the cost of such maintenance by the town shall be assessed rateably against the properties within the development. All right, item 10, procedures and pre-application review. Item 10.1, applicants for mixed-use development shall follow the special permit procedures specified in section 7.2 and the site plan review procedures specified in section 7.4. No comments there? Next one, 10.11. To promote better communication and avoid misunderstanding, applicants are encouraged to submit a preliminary plan for review by the planning board prior to the application for a special permit.
Don, can we just remove the first line to promote better communication and to avoid misunderstanding?
Okay.
I don't think that's necessary in a bylaw. It's just applicants are encouraged to submit a preliminary plan.
Okay.
They're not mandated, but they're highly encouraged.
So it's not mandated, but you said highly encouraged.
Well, that's,
Right.
I mean, that's basically what it's saying here. They're encouraged to submit a preliminary plan.
All
I
right,
believe under
agreed.
subdivision control law, it's the same way. You don't have
Yeah.
to submit a preliminary, you only have to
You can
submit
go
a
right into it.
definitive, but it gives you the ability to hear thoughts, processes, and maybe make adjustments in the meantime.
All right, so we're okay with language encouraged, not required. Encouraged is fine with everybody? We're good? All right, so unless I hear some objection to promote better communication and to avoid misunderstanding, we're striking that.
Strikeout.
We're okay, we're all in agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Item 10.12, a special permit application and site plan review application shall be submitted to the planning board. Thoughts on that?
That's repetitive. It's in section 1, it's in section 5. It says, a mixed-use development shall be permitted in a mixed-use district only upon issuance of a special permit with site plan review and design review. So we don't need to have it again.
Okay.
So I suggest we just delete it.
Sounds great. Any thoughts? Okay.
The whole That's fine. That's
All right.
repetitive.
All right. All right, 11, additional provisions. All roads in the development shall meet the minimum requirements for public roads as established by the Department of Public Works. However, the planning board may grant waivers from the requirements for width of right-of-way and pavement.
That's usual and customary with things that are happening right now.
Okay. And do we need any, and typically, do we need to state, or is it just because it's pretty obvious that before the planning board does it, they're gonna get comment from police and fire
That's part of site plan review and special permit.
for this waiver? And sidewalks, that should, required or waived? Or is that waivable?
Whoa, 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 whoa.
I'm adding that in.
It's a question.
I know back when we were on the board, we had, every subdivision had to have sidewalks. Is sidewalks gonna be, is that waivable or is that required? Or is that just part of the site plan review up to the
In my opinion, a mixed-use development where you're encouraged to walk
yeah?
should be mandated that sidewalks are in. Especially when you're gonna be walking from hopefully your residence to a restaurant, to a coffee shop, to, what are you gonna walk down the middle of the street throughout the development? I think it goes without saying, I don't think you've probably ever done a development that you didn't put sidewalks.
That is correct.
And there was discussion with the 25-foot.
Thank you.
Buffer, front buffer, that there would be, it'd be landscaping either side of the sidewalk, so, yeah.
All right, so there's no language to say the sidewalk, that requirements for public roads.
Do we want to say sidewalks shall not be waived?
Sidewalk requirements shall not be waived, yep, I think that's.
I mean, we're not
So-
saying where
Maybe
they
it would
need
still
to
go
be.
through Site plan review anyway, though.
Yeah, but let's.
Their sidewalk, look at the issue we're having with sidewalks on the corner of 244 Shaker Road right now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, may as well, I mean,
So,
my street I live on has a sidewalk to nowhere, so that some future East Long Meadow town won't have to do some takings or anything like that, it's all paid for, and then eventually when Allen Street runs, and that sidewalk runs to it, so it's over there.
So Don, are we looking at, under number 11, additional provisions, adding a number C that says sidewalk?
Pedestrian sidewalk.
Sidewalk requirements shall not be waived.
I think that's fine.
either there or adding it to A.
A.
Added to A?
Added to A, sidewalk requirement, so this will be added to A, requirement. You could drop shall not be
Roads in the
waived.
drive.
Department of Public Works, but a period, get rid of however. The planning board may grant waivers from the requirements for width of right-of-way and pavement, except
With the exception of, sidewalks shall not be
with
waived.
the exception of sidewalk waiver. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So what's the language we're working with?
Wait a minute, let me write it down. Okay, this 11A should read, all roads in the development shall meet the minimum requirements for public roads as established by the Department of Public Works. However, the planning board may grant waivers from the requirements for width of right-of-way and pavement, with the exception that sidewalks shall not be waived. Okay?
We all good with that? Okay. All right,
Thank you.
thanks, everyone. 11B, a bus stop shall be provided for public or private transport. I think we had some conversation a while ago, may have been a while ago, we were talking about creating like an Uber pickup spot or common type thing. I don't know how we can compel PVTA to come to any parts of East Long Meadow that they're not already there.
But I think a location is probably suitable for any type of transportation service, whether it's a bus stop or whether it's a,
Yeah, I don't have any problem with
It's
that.
just when we say bus stop, do we mean just like a spot that could accommodate
Right.
a large vehicle, or are we saying that a physical structure must be erected?
That's a great question.
Well, no, actually, a bus stop isn't a bus facility.
It's just a
Like
sign.
on Converse Street, they have
Right.
pull-offs that can accommodate the size of a bus.
Right, but do we mean also by bus stop that you would then need to build like one of those glass enclosures or
oh,
something?
to
or-
protect the
Right,
pedestrians,
like-
I know what you're
yeah.
saying. I think that's part of the plan. If you've got a designation for a transportation stop, if the developer wants to, in his wisdom, put something there and it's suitable for the location, I think that's okay. But it's a good point, Connor, you know.
All right, so do we want to add a bus stop with appropriate environmental coverage, or just leave it the way it is? A bus stop shall be provided for public
Or private
transport.
Right. Ouch, I'm sorry.
Ride share is, would that be considered private transport? Like Uber and Lyft? Is that kind of the understanding we have? Or should we say private, public, private, or ride share transport? Like an Uber and Lyft pickup area?
If we were gonna say that, then I think we need to strike the word
I
bus,
think
because
we
that's
can
not a
do
bus.
that.
Yeah, I mean, private bus. And again, we may have people in units over here, and Uber doesn't, they don't want to walk over here, they want to pick up in their front. So, okay, we'll leave it the way it is.
Leave it the way it is. Good.
Leave it the way it is, all right. Page 7 of 7, number 12 on the top, development regulations for mixed-use district. Development, redevelopment, and reuse will generally be deemed consistent with the purposes of a mixed-use district when the planning board has determined that the proposed project meets the following objectives. A, the mixed-use development will be complementary to nearby building and structures. Any thoughts there? I see one comment that says, and reflect existing and probable future of the neighborhood. I saw that, I see that in some of my notes.
Right, and that stemmed from some discussion that Ralph and I had previously, trying to envision integrating a mixed-use development within certain areas of the town. Granted, we have one proposal before us, but this is a town bylaw. And conceivably, if you're looking for, at a mixed-use development on Pease Road, for instance, you want it to be integrated into the surrounding neighborhood, which is an established neighborhood, and that neighborhood's not gonna change. So we're not looking, we wouldn't want to see Jaigunda buildings nestled into single-story neighborhoods. And so that was why we wrote that.
Okay.
And, you know, that design review comes into play. I would hope that the planning board could say this is not in keeping with surrounding neighborhood.
I think what we're looking at is, like, 330 Chestnut Street is more of an industrial facility. So, you know, the larger brick buildings can all go nice there. If you go to, let's say, Pine Knoll Golf Course, where there's all single-family houses, maybe you're gonna do more of a country-style, two-story development, which blends in more with that neighborhood. I think the whole thing is to try and get it to blend in wherever the location is that it's put in town. And how do you word that?
Okay.
I think that's where the design review comes in, and giving the planning board authority to be able to say, well, we don't like four-story brick buildings at the golf course, but over here is good.
And I think the existing language already kind of speaks to it, that
You
it's
think it speaks to
complementary
that?
to
Yeah.
neighboring structures.
I have no problems with leaving it the way it
Yeah,
is. It was
okay.
just, just trying to think outside of the box in terms of future, in areas, not the elephant in the room, no offense. Okay, we'll delete
Okay,
those
so we'll delete
words.
it. Okay. All right, item B, unless there's any further conversation on A. No. The mixed-use development will be consistent with the zoning bylaws of the town of East Long Meadow. I would like to hope that's a Captain Obvious form,
Yes,
but
right.
I guess statement, but hopefully that's the case. The mixed-use development will provide for high-density, quality development consistent with the character of building types, streetscapes, and other community features traditionally found in a densely settled area of the town of East Long Meadow.
You know, when Ralph and I looked at this, we thought this was language for another community. It doesn't reflect East Long Meadow in that highly densely settled areas other than single-family houses.
Mhm.
You know, we have our Zone C, which is a highly densely settled area, but it has no bearing on a mixed-use development. And when I think of high density, I think of, you know, lots of structures, stories high together, and that's not East Long Meadow. And so, when we looked at this, we crossed out some words. The mixed-use development will provide for quality development consistent with the character of building types, streetscapes, and other community features traditionally found within the town of East Long Meadow. We're not a Boston suburb, we're not a Watertown or a Dedham, we're East Long Meadow. And so, you know, the feeling is those were the words that we crossed out. We crossed out high density and...
in densely settled areas of.
Right,
And replaced, add the word within.
Yes,
Right.
I think that's good.
right.
You okay with it? Okay, so we're gonna strike out high density as well as in densely settled areas of, and add the word within before the town of East Long Meadow.
Right.
All right, D, the mixed-use development will have adequate water, drainage, and sewerage systems or provide upgrades to existing system for its needs and usage to satisfy town of East Long Meadow resident requirements. The mixed-use development will have adequate water, drainage, and sewerage systems or provide upgrades to existing system for its needs and usage to satisfy town of East Long Meadow requirements.
It says what it is.
Yeah, it's another obvious form. The next one, the commercial, it's E, the commercial and business uses of the mixed-use development shall be planned and designed in an integrated manner to complement the residential use and help foster vibrant, workable, livable, and attractive neighborhoods consistent with the town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaw and this section. I have one comment that it's repetitive, but to me, since we're doing Captain Obvious stuff in this thing, may as well leave it in here. That's just me.
It is what it is. I mean, we just felt that, you know.
I just felt that.
And we were
Yeah.
surprised because we've been sanctioned before about having too many words.
Yeah, if they want kind of a closing summation of, you know, keeping it a livable and attractive neighborhood.
No problems.
F's, site development, location of buildings and structure. A lot in the mixed-use district may contain more than one structure with a principal use. The planning board may grant approval for multiple structures on one lot only upon making a determination that the proposed development contains a mix of commercial, business, and a mix of permitted residential uses. Thoughts on that?
It's a mixed-use development,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that there are going to be different proposals for the different uses. We wanted, or what we discussed, changing a mix to the correct percentage. It's just,
It's a mixed-use development, so as long as it contains the correct percentage of commercial, business, and residential uses, instead of a mix of permitted, a mix of.
Now, we're talking 20% commercial business,
20 to 30.
20 to 30, and a mix. So the correct percentage of commercial business, so it should be commercial / business.
Comma business.
It might suggest there's a percentage between commercial and business,
Right,
and we don't have a
right.
percentage of those two. Commercial or business usage commercial and business uses and residential uses.
It's over 100,000 feet.
So is that second mix of redundant?
Let me see, where are you speaking?
Because we have like the proposed development contains a mix
Oh,
of
and, right
commercial
here?
business and a mix of,
Yeah, I agree. So, correct percentage of commercial and business uses and residential uses.
Right.
Residential uses. The only residential.
Well, the residential uses, there's a mix. You can have apartments,
yeah, okay.
townhomes,
I
condos,
see
single
what you're
family.
saying, yeah. All right.
So the planning board may grant approval for multiple structures on one lot only upon making determination that proposed development contains the correct percentage of commercial/business uses and residential uses. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. The lot is 40 acres, right?
Well, that was what we,
Yeah. So that's what, when they speak of a lot, they're talking about a 40-acre parcel,
minimum.
minimum.
Through the chair.
Yes, John?
In the first line, you want to contain more than one structure with more than one principal use?
They contain more than one structure with more than one principal use. Give me an example if you don't mind.
You have a Dunkin' Donuts on the ground floor and
Apartments on the top.
apartments on the second floor in the same building.
Okay.
Which is what we're working on.
You have restaurants and offices and stores all in the same building.
How did this pass?
Yeah, how did this get to it? We're trying to think what the mindset of the planning board was on this one.
We're
No,
not in the mixed use district.
is that what they intended?
Yes, in my opinion, I mean, we've always talked about
Yeah.
a building with a couple different uses in it, and maybe apartments above.
Right. That's kind
It's
of.
just how do you put all of that wording together, I think is,
So you're looking to add with more than one principal use? That makes sense.
I think we all agree what mixed use is in concept, what we're
One
looking
structure
at.
with more than one structure with a principal use. Yeah, that's the thing is,
Wait a minute.
a lot in the mixed use may contain more than one structure
With more than one principal use.
That part doesn't make sense.
Because principal is,
It makes it sound like it's the only, or like the primary.
Because
Yeah,
principal
I'm just
means
trying to see
one.
what the intent was on this thing. A lot in the mixed use district may contain more than
look
one
at the second
structure.
sentence, planning board.
If I may, I think the purpose was, because I remember when George was talking at the meetings, he wanted to make sure that if we were gonna have commercial and business, that it also included residential. Like, he didn't want, do you remember that? Like, that he didn't want just only commercial and business in one building, he wanted to make sure there was also residential included in it.
All right, then maybe there's another way to say this. 'Cause
I'm sure there is.
Maybe each building is a mixed use.
Right, well, not each building, but just that if you were gonna have commercial and business, it needed to also include some sort of mixture of residential. Like, you could have separate buildings that were just residential.
Well, the
He
last
also
sentence
wanted the
takes care
mix.
of that.
A permanent
That's what I remember him
proposal
saying.
Contains with the current language in there or revised language? Commercial,
No, not less than a certain percentage of the buildings.
Multiple structures on one lot, only upon making determination that the proposed
Well,
development.
those percentages already are accounted for as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think this whole section is needed, but whatever.
So maybe that's, maybe that design is.
Wait a minute.
This is a summary of everything.
It's needed
Well,
if there's
but-
some arcane thing that says you can only have one use on a lot.
May contain more than
Well,
one
no, I
structure.
think you should take it out.
Put a lot in.
Because there's not.
What if we got rid of that section altogether?
May contain.
Doesn't have a restriction on
I
mean-
use on a lot.
You could make contain one structure with principal use.
What if we got rid of it, the whole thing?
No, wait a minute.
Everything else is
Because the
already-
last sentence, to me, and maybe I'm way off base here, but we've been just talking about this for weeks now. And a mixed use, you could have all your commercial in one area and your whole residential in another place, if that's the way the project is presented, as long as the percentages are correct. Is that not true? Or do all buildings have to have a combination?
Well, I know all of them do not, because, it won't be possible the 20%, 80%, or that.
Right.
You're gonna have standalone residentials. That's why we had earlier,
Correct.
you can have a residential up to 4 stories, but you can't have a mixed residential business more than 3 stories.
But could you have a
So-
business two-story business unit.
If you drive the commercial percentage high enough, you're gonna have to.
How high you want it?
Through the chair.
I want it lower.
I know.
Your percentages are too high.
I know.
Commercial.
I know.
So Jane, you were saying that, the way you remember, Mr. Kingston wanted to make sure that at least a building would have commercial use and residential use?
No, if you were going to have business,
Yeah.
then it also needed residential, and I think that was also, if you go to 3.2, the original reading of that, he had commercial and business uses when integrated with residential uses. That's what I think the planning board was thinking at that point when they were drafting it, that they, if you were going, you could have separate standalone residential, that was cool, and that was fine.
But all the commercial had to be,
Mixed use, it had to be both. That's what I remember. Commercial and business had to be both. Does anybody else remember?
No, I remember that as well. The planning board was very concerned that it truly be mixed use,
okay.
that it be a mix of business and commercial with residential, and that there also be a mix of different residential types, whether they were apartment, condominium,
Right.
townhome, or above the store, if you will. Didn't really want to put in, and didn't, you know, that you want X number of townhouses or X
Right.
number of this or X number of that, but wanted that it was mixed use.
Right.
Mixed use district.
So with that being said, something
Yeah,
like
the
the Center
definition for mixed
Grill
use.
area plaza
right, yeah,
would
it's
be
in the-
allowed within that.
Right here,
because
general
you have
description.
business on the first floor, unless you put apartments up above, you couldn't do that.
Not with this bylaw.
Not with this one, no.
But maybe-
That's why we're changing
What
it
about a
to,
standalone grocery
Doesn't
store
have to,
then?
though.
If it didn't have apartments above it,
I don't think the intent was that you could have a standalone commercial or business space when they were doing it, when the planning board was doing it.
well, good thing we have a planning board member about to walk in.
Hi, Tide.
You may
Tide,
you may want to
fit this
turn
time
around
to
and
work.
walk
right,
out.
you may want to turn around.
Welcome, sir.
Welcome, have a seat.
Kinda knew I wasn't gonna be here till noon.
No,
Chair, may I interrogate him?
yes, you may, go to town.
Take a deep breath, Tide.
And turn to page 7.
You're making me nervous.
Yeah, the last part, we're almost at the finish line.
Tide, what we're talking about is, in a business within the mixed-use district. Was it the planning board's intention that a building, let's say that housed a business, had to have residential within it? Or could you have a development that, such as Center Square Grill, within this mixed use?
We never really talked about it one way or the other. I mean, what you're saying is a
So-
mixed-use building with residential above it.
Right.
Mandatory. In other words, you couldn't just have a building with just all businesses.
We didn't have that discussion.
Because if you had say, a specialty market, like
Tide, I
a,
feel
we?
like you did, because,
Oh, fill me in.
Because if you go into 3.2, it says, if the original language was commercial and business uses when integrated with residential uses. Do you remember George being very specific about, he wanted to have, if it was gonna be commercial or business, that it have also residential, so that you couldn't have like a standalone grocery store or something like that. It was that if you were gonna have commercial or business, you needed to have residential. You could have residential separate, but if you were gonna have commercial or business, you needed residential included in that. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay.
But as far as me personally, I don't know if I really care if
Yeah.
there's residential above a grocery store or not. Is that the question?
Yeah, we're just
Well,
trying
like
to
I
Trying to
said,
figure
we're
out the
just trying
intent
to
of the
figure it
planning
out.
board.
Right. Yeah, because,
Where are we? 3.2 where?
page 7 of 7, the last,
Actually
F.
looking at
It was
F.
in seven,
on
there
page
was
12,
something in
12
seven,
F.
yeah. That, right at the end. And then that brought me back to 3.2.
So page 7 of 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must have a different copy.
I only care if the percentage goes high. If the
Right.
percentage goes high, I'm not gonna have a choice. You can't,
It's,
I agree.
It's
I
number
mean,
12 tied,
Oh, here it is.
F.
Yep.
The
Might be,
last paragraph, the very last one.
A lot in the mixed-use district may contain more than one structure with principal use, with a principal use.
with a principal use. More than one structure with a principal use? Or,
It says a lot in the mixed-use district may contain more than one structure with a principal use. Which could.
So if you had a building with down below a restaurant.
Right.
And up above was apartments, that would be two principal uses, residential above
Right.
and business down below. That'd be two principal uses. Now, if the building was large enough and down here, I mean, you could divide up buildings, or you could have another one right next to it on the same lot that was only run principal use, all business. I think what you suggested adding, you could have multiple principal uses
so I'm trying to think
in a
of
building.
what the whole purpose of the section is, though.
And
I'm
there's
trying to
a,
think where does it protect the town? Or is it just more fluff that
Where's
is
Are we reading too much into this?
I think we're reading too much into this one, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, simply reading the sentence, a lot in the mixed-use district may contain more than one structure with a principal use. What's an example? We have a singular principal use,
okay.
more than one structure, yeah.
Back in 3.21, one single use with up to a maximum of 25,000 square foot is allowed. So that's a larger, potentially retail use.
Right.
True.
But what if you have a structure that has a insurance company and a small laundromat or something in there?
It's still
You
business.
only have one use and one business per building?
Or an
That's gonna-
Aldi with
that's
a
gonna-
package store.
If the answer is no, that's not your intent, so
No.
make sure that's not what your bylaw says.
But see, I don't have
Exactly, I'm
any
trying to figure out the
problem.
one principal use thing is my struggle.
I don't have any problem, well, a lot in a mixed-use district may contain more than one structure with a principal use. You can have can you have two 25,000 square foot? You have up to one 25,000 square foot, keep flipping pages here. Two uses may up to a maximum of 15,000 square feet. You might, it just all depends.
Yeah,
I would leave it alone.
leave the language as it is.
Leave the,
Because it
because-
still says the planning board may grant. It doesn't say they will, they may grant.
Says they may, doesn't mean they shall.
Does the town have a problem with that?
I think
I
we're,
don't.
we're just trying to make sure we understand what they're talking about is,
May contain,
yeah, a lot.
not shall.
May contain more than one structure with a principal use. Okay,
because the maximum of that principal use is 25,000 square feet.
And you don't have a problem with it?
No, I'm just trying to point out that you do have a general description, and it says what a mixed-use development is. So I would be inclined to say, take that last one out. It sounds
But I guess
confusing.
listening to what we've been hearing about what George said confuses that a little bit.
Yeah. But you do have a description, what a general description, what a mixed-use development is. The last, I don't know what the word. you don't
maybe we
need
should,
it.
it looks like I'm gonna talk to the town attorney, maybe
You know,
we can talk to George on
I'm gonna go
what his
with
thought-
John on this one. I think we're putting too much into this.
Yeah. What would be the harm if we got rid of it?
I don't think there'd be any harm.
Are we agreed? Or is this something that just kind of, again, because it seemed that last section is all
Let's circle it.
statements of the obvious.
Let's circle it, sleep on it, and come back with the idea of getting rid of it at the next
Just
meeting.
put a footnote about reviewing the definition.
What's that, Joe?
I said, just put a footnote to the back and review the definition. and
Yep.
where we have
Yeah,
it.
I have that one and that other, the one I'm gonna talk to about the community association.
part of me says that since it has the word may, it doesn't really hurt to leave it in there. We don't need to.
Right, it's not a shall.
Yeah. Doesn't really say anything, does it?
No.
It's, well, you know.
The more you read it, the less it says. So.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what the intent was, that's a, talk to George and find out.
Well, and part of this bylaw has been cut and pasted from other places. And so, and we're finding that out as we're going through, and so maybe this was just an addition.
Yeah, we move on.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, we're at the end.
So we have additional
Well,
add-ons.
and.
Some suggestions.
Right.
I have a few questions also.
All right, let's start, Marilyn spoke first, so I'll let her go first, then Ralph, then Sid.
There were some things that were discussed in the original proposal that was withdrawn.
Mhm.
And one of them had to do with a requirement for a host community agreement. And it's my opinion, if you will, that there needs to be some sort of requirement in place to perhaps address the impact issues of what's being proposed, depending on where it's being proposed. And the impact on traffic, or the impact on our schools, or even housing impact, affordable versus luxury. I think those are the kinds, I believe, those are the kinds of things that would be included within a host community agreement, which is not referenced anywhere within the bylaw.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add?
Well, actually, what I'm looking at is we had added, what, G and H?
Yes, you have.
So one of our thoughts was that under the site plan review, not allowing the traffic study to be waived.
Oh, that'd be insane.
Well-
If they allowed it to be waived.
But that's what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
is let's put it right into the bylaw.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that makes sense.
And where would, there was another section that referenced the planning board waiving, and that's where we added the issue of sidewalks. I don't know.
That was under number 11.
I don't know if it would be appropriate to add that there. Additional provisions, or maybe we want to write it separately, make it item C. Under 6 of 7, number 11, additional provisions. That's where we added that sidewalks would not be waived.
Okay, right here, yeah.
And then B was a bus stop shall be provided for public or private transport.
Yeah,
And C, would it be appropriate to put it there? That a traffic study will not be waived? I mean, it doesn't matter where we put it,
It's just so it's in there.
because it's under additional provisions. I mean, we know that the site plan review gives the planning board authority to waive
Right.
a number of things.
I just think a traffic study on a large development, 40 acres, you can't allow the planning board to be able to waive it. Just my feeling. I don't think they would, but I would rather it be in there as wording that, no, you can't waive it.
How can you say may not be waived as opposed to one would be required?
Because it's already required. It's already required, but your bylaw says that you can waive it.
All right, I didn't think about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Exactly what she said.
so basically, add a section 11C, under 7.4, site plan review, a traffic study may not be waived. Just gonna repeat some language.
11,
11C,
okay, right.
you have that, right? Yeah. there you go.
All right. The impact statement, which would be the host agreement, the host community agreement, at least that's how I was thinking that would be a way to approach unknown issues that might impact our community.
I think those are all I think what we want to do for our next meeting is see if we can get a somewhat cleaner version of what we have in here. Maybe I can ask.
Well, I would have to do that,
You would?
because I have the document
All
on my
right.
computer.
If you would, that'd be fantastic.
All right, so how do you want me to do this? We have some sections. I can continue doing with the cross out, and then additional language in red.
If you could send it.
And then I would send it to
as an
everybody.
editable form, so that I can also make, if I pick up something that you did, which is very doubtful, but if I did, I could basically add a different color of red line edits, and you can see, it'll say comment from Don, comment from Ralph, comment from Connor.
If I can do that, I don't.
Yeah, and then
you know.
I can create my own set, and we can collectively put it all together, and we can discuss it at our next meeting,
And-
just to make sure we didn't miss any of the edits. I mean, it's a nice thing that we have the minutes here from the first three.
But Paul doesn't Paul's doing a great job on the
Oh, he's doing a
minutes, but-
fantastic
But he
job.
doesn't have this, he would have no way of.
If you could do that, that'd be, the marching orders for the next meeting would be that, got further discussion on that, further discussion, the host community agreement, my report back with the town council regarding the potentially dual associations, both with the condominium and both with the project. And then the last one, and I've got my notes on that one, was to talk to George or Connie and try to understand what the intent was of section 12F. Am I missing any other hot button issues? Yes, Joe.
Can I just, for discussion through the chair, is about the requirement for commercial space. If you're looking, requirement for
Oh, yeah.
commercial space, so I heard the number 20 to 30%.
Right.
And if you were to apply this to not one development, but several developments that could be contemplated, that's a pretty significant amount of commercial space that would be required. So I think that you might want to take pause and put numbers down. John and I just spoke briefly before, if it's between 20 and 30,000, 20 and 30%, that could be 100,000 square feet on a lot. So if you have 2 to 3 that might come before the board, that's a pretty substantial amount of retail space or commercial space that would have to be required to be developed.
And through the chair, that was one of my concerns. Yes, I hope we do reach 30% commercial and business space in these developments. 5% I feel is low. I feel we should at least discuss it to look at maybe 10 to 13%. Because, in my opinion, the last thing you want is having empty spaces when you're trying to market East Long Meadow.
Okay, we've been talking about this a lot and doing a lot of research online, and people are giving us information, and, the town of Dedham supposedly has 5 or 10%. I'm not sure what Jane had submitted to us. And I looked online, and the town of Dedham now has a moratorium against mixed-use developments because of the issues that they're dealing with these kinds of developments. And I couldn't find anything that was comparable to what we're talking about here in East Long Meadow. I found an example of a 7-store section with 27 apartments up top. We're not talking things like that. We're talking potentially a 40-acre parcel, which is 43,560 square feet. And then, I'm sorry, that's wrong.
Per acre.
Per acre. It's 1,742,400 square feet for 40 acres. And when you think about 40 acres and you think about 100,000 square feet of commercial on that parcel, to me, that doesn't sound like a huge amount when you're talking mixed use. However, we've only talked about bringing down the commercial piece, and if it's not right, maybe we need to bring down the residential piece too. Maybe we need to think about the density that we're talking about in a project like this, because if we're talking 5%, we're not talking a mixed-use development. We're talking, as Don, I'm going to borrow your words, a hotel with concierge, amenities.
I agree with you on the 5%. I'm just looking at the fact that 20% is a lot for
Okay.
for minimum.
Okay.
Like I said, I hope that it's 30%. with the popularity of the developments that we're going to have, that people want to come to East Long Meadow and live here and use the commercial and business services. As you're getting started in building, I feel 20% is too much at this point. I'm thinking more in the line 10 to 13, maybe up to 15%. That's for us to discuss, but
What about
Can we put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yeah, bringing the residential number
And
down.
I will also be doing some research and trying to find other areas, like I know Jane sent us Dedham on the percentage and.
That I
yeah.
know that you guys were talking
Can you
about.
give us the names of these locations and the sizes of them so we can compare apples? Because I couldn't find, you just gave us percentages and a city name. No, the Legacy Farms or Berkshire Estates or whatever that would address
those
this
names.
particular proposal that you're talking about. Because I know Dedham is a different kind of community than East Long Meadow. It's more urban in its being located near Boston. So.
Yeah, I don't think a cookie cutter approach will work. And what we're talking about is this is what they did here, this is what they did there. I mean, East Long Meadow is different than all the other towns, and all those other towns are different than each other as well.
Right.
This has been on my mind for a long time, this particular topic. And I originally was thinking 20%, numbers like that. But after I stepped thinking about this and digesting it, thinking about the other side of the coin, I think 20% is way too much. One is, I don't want to see a lot of vacancy here, neither does anyone else. Once a vacancy's been built, it's awfully hard to reconfigure it to a different kind of a use once it's already meant for a specific use. So that's very difficult and very expensive. And I think 20% is too high.
But you also said, and I don't mean to, because you're here, and we've had these discussions, because Ralph and I attended most of those public hearings, and the planning board did not want a primarily residential development, which is exactly what you gave us.
And I specifically.
You gave it to us, 95% residential.
Yeah, and I specifically said, that was one of my quotes. I said, hey, if this is all gonna be residential, the mixed-use component is just a sham to create a project, and we don't want that either.
Well, that's how it started. It
Well, I
was
understand
originally
that.
a residential.
But after I've given it a lot more thought, I also think 20% is unrealistic.
Okay,
So-
so then we look at the residential piece.
That's it.
Oh, it's
Well-
time to leave, school's over.
Yeah, but what you're doing is, you're doing it differently. What I'm talking about is percentage to be devoted to commercial, and the commercial is gonna include office, it's gonna include, let's say, gymnasium, it's gonna include retail, things other than
Correct.
residential.
Correct.
But what you're doing is, you're saying, well, in order to get the percentages, we'll just make the residential smaller.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the bylaw that you're promoting right now, or that the planning board has given to the town council, has a minimum of 5% commercial. And theoretically, that's all they have to do. That's all they have to do, and so then you have, the balance is 95% residential. And that's a huge hit for the town of East Long Meadow for what you're billing as a mixed-use development, which I don't see it that way.
But let's just take your same argument. What you just said a minute ago is maybe we need to readdress the residential and make that smaller.
For the impact on the town of East Long Meadow.
Okay, but you didn't solve the problem. All you did is made the residential smaller.
Because if you had 20 to 30%, the balance of having more commercial would bring the residential piece down.
But don't you have to look at the impacts? Like, I don't understand what impacts you're talking, so to lower the residential, lower the impacts. What impacts? Are they traffic? Are they
The whole
school?
sale,
Are they tax? Are they?
the whole selling feature of a mixed-use development, truthfully, when individuals like myself bought into the concept, was that it would provide necessary services in another section of our community.
Right.
And so when you're looking at other mixed-use developments, and the internet is full of them, and every
Yeah.
community has different ones. But it's not a mixed-use development at 5% and 95%, and it doesn't enhance the south end of town, which needs additional services, in my opinion. So that, I mean, and we're only talking, you're talking about the proposal that you're gonna be working on, but most of the available land is in the south end of our town. And so, as planners or former planners, I would want to consider what would enhance the community, the town of East Long Meadow. And that's why Marilyn Richards bought into mixed use, because of the balance of what you're seeing. So you're not just getting a total residential piece. And yes, that's attractive. I might want to live there someday. But I also feel that there are enough, you know, of the surrounding communities that could benefit by having a, you know, we talk about it. I go to Connecticut or Long Meadow or Springfield for my groceries. You know, why can't I stay in East Long Meadow? And so if there was something in that area, a higher end specialty store, and if we're hearing it doesn't work, then it's not a mixed use.
I don't think you heard the words, "it doesn't work," to the chair. Is that I brought up the issue that if this is a global planning that you're doing for the town.
Correct.
That if you have more than one, you have a significant minimum requirement that you'll have 200, 300,000 square feet required for commercial.
Right,
And that's the point I was making.
Right, right. I hear your point.
I do understand that
I do understand
aspect
that.
of it. And if you, let's say, there's 3 mixed-use developments that choose to go in, 2 in the south end of town, 1 in the
You'll
central
have
or something.
300,000 square feet of commercial space required. So if you lower the requirement, it doesn't mean that if we start the project, and I don't mean to use ours, I'm just saying that if there's a requirement and people want it and the demographics are there, that the retailers want to be there, they'll come and we'll build it. But to say that you have to have a minimum requirement of 20% for zoning in the town may be too high of a bar for other projects.
No.
Or you do what you say and you reduce the residential. We would reduce the size of residential units to get your square feet up, you know, your percentage up, but then you're talking potentially more rentals, not as many townhomes, and you're gonna lose that residential mix that the planning board was also looking for. So again, you know, a developer, we're gonna figure it out. You know, and if you told me to build 20%, we'll build 20%, and it'll sit or whatever, and we'll have to convert it later or whatever's gonna happen. But, you know, I think the unintended consequences are there. So, I think we had actually talked about doing a few things for you last time, and we didn't, so I'm gonna certainly do that now. One is, I'd like to put forth a roster of commercial uses that this is what would be potentially in a mixed use, and see if it's that type of services that you're talking about. So that would be one. 2 would be, I think you had asked me for a site plan of that would show kind of the buffer relationship to the front, and how that worked. And Don, I think you said, you know, the fairways in Piscataway was the one that would work that way. So I'll provide that to you there. And then the other thing that I really like to do for you is provide an actual shared parking matrix that would show the relationship between the residential and the commercial, because we are over parking this thing by a boatload. And I understand the concern about that there isn't going to be enough. There's going to be so much, it's not even funny. So I'd like to commit to provide you those things this week so that you have them for 2 weeks from now, because I think that's good information for the committee to consider in general. Again, not specific, but because they're threshold. I think they're threshold issues to talk about.
John, in the November 20th meeting of the planning board, in their minutes, Chairman Kingston invited the developer to present at the December 4th meeting of the planning board the type of uses the developer sought to introduce into the mix of retail, commercial, and housing. Now, did you do that at that time?
Yes, we did.
So that would be the same information?
No, the information I have now is much more current.
Okay.
We're actually have people out, leasing people out, talking to people, and
There was also a plan, and I don't know what happened, there was a plan at that time to have 2 public informational meetings that the planning board was going to host. And one of them was supposed to be done before December, and that never happened either. And that whole plan was to, and Miss Connie was gonna take care of that. Do you know what happened, Tide?
Haven't heard a word.
Because at public hearings after that, there were comments made by the chairman of the planning board that we only hear from 2 people, and you know who those 2 people were. And we don't know that those 2 people know what's best for East Long Meadow. And so, and we're very welcome to hear what the rest of the town has to say. And so, you know, I don't know what's happened to those 2 public meetings that we were supposed to have. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Oh, I don't feel on the spot.
It's very frustrating to be at this end of the process and feel like, you know, we're not even nearly done.
Yeah, particularly some of the things we're talking about are things that have been talked about for a long time and still up in the air, this percentage. I mean, this has been on my mind for a long time.
So through the chair, if we had lowered the commercial down to 15%, 10%, that's gonna change your amount of required parking based on the 4.5, based on 85% residential. So to say that we're way over, are you basing that on having to do 20% commercial?
well,
Because that's
combination of having to do 20% commercial and the combination of having 0 share between residential and commercial.
I guess it all depends on how it's designed. You know, if you,
Well,
if
no,
you've got.
if there's 0 share in the count between residential and commercial, it doesn't matter how it's designed, because every parking space is there.
Every square footage has to be accounted for
You're-
with a parking space.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
counting every single one, that it's gonna be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And
Wasn't our parking calculation, I mean, we didn't say, hey, if you have a restaurant in here, you're gonna need, well, we did,
We did,
3.
right.
But I mean, certain businesses require more, and we just basically said,
Well,
we're
it
gonna
was-
average this to 4.5.
It was based on the planned business development, which is your
Right.
center square.
Which is-
And that used to be 5 per thousand, and I went to town meeting and got it down to 4.5 per thousand. Because the feeling was that the shared parking was working at that location, and it would allow the restaurant to have more seats to change the parking formula, to be honest with you. To more parking available.
But it's still not 100% occupancy either, Center Square.
I know.
So we haven't really, I don't think it's been built when seeing a full 100% occupancy there. So, and parking is I go to CSG, Center Square Grill, quite a bit, and parking can be a challenge sometimes. I was a little nervous when they opened up that new luncheon, Chipotle's, but apparently that's working out. But we still haven't seen, like I said, full 100% occupancy in that plaza with White's moved out, no one's taken over for them.
I will, through the chair, I will note that in the planned business development bylaw, there is an incentive to develop shared parking, right? And they give a developer a reduction in certain landscaping requirements from, I think it goes down from 12 to 10%. So I feel like if that's gonna be the requirement with respect to the parking, that you're gonna build it out anyway, I feel like the developer is gonna have to, I think that the bylaw should require or allow the developer to reduce in something else.
Well, the difference between the planned business is you have municipal uses factored in and
Why would
whereas.
municipal uses be allowed in?
But I'm just saying, but if, and the whole incentive with these changes in parking formula, if you will, is to not require the full maximum. As I said, retail is 6, one space per, or 6 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail. And now you only have to do 4.5.
I know, but if you're using the numbers, as you stated, in the planned business development, right, that's where you're.
Well, that's-
This is in, along the same lines of what's going on in the planned business development, is giving the developer some sort of reduction and another requirement, if you're gonna require this parking spaces.
All right, I'm going to wrap up the meeting now. What I'm
Through
going
the
to
chair.
do, but real, yeah, go ahead.
If we can, instead of two, I'll be out of the area in 2 weeks, and I'm not anybody special, but I'd like to be at the meeting. Is there any way we can get the ball rolling and move a little faster, maybe have a meeting next Monday? And plan on, instead of 10:30 to 12:30, maybe start the meeting at noon or 1?
No.
No, that's killing, that would kill me.
Okay,
I'm not here either.
Yeah.
okay. Or next week sometime?
Okay, next week's.
I think we need to plan it at more than a couple of hours, so we
I'm on
can.
the, I'm good this week.
How about this week?
This week?
Yes.
And next week, I'm in California, Monday and Tuesday.
And next week I'm out of town.
Yeah, the 4th, you're not available. The 11th is Veterans Day. This will be closed. And then I won't be available on the 18th. So hopefully.
What about,
Let's see if what do we have, aside from Mondays at this time, anything else works?
what if we do this Friday? Or
I will
Thursday?
not be here on
No,
Friday.
Friday, I have like a totally full plate.
Okay,
Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday?
I guess I'll miss you guys.
Well, let's,
Thursday looks good.
I can do
Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday, I can't. Thursday the 24th?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I can't make that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a council meeting the 22nd. What about the 29th, Tuesday? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, you guys are in,
Grab them.
Yeah.
okay.
I
Sorry,
can,
Sid,
I
I
can
say
be
we
back
stay
the
with the
29th.
4th.
Okay, my
How
thought
about
is
the,
just give it more
how
more
about the
time.
5th, the day after?
I am in Nashville all week,
All week, okay.
and my
I can
mom
be
will
back
kill
on
me.
We can do Nashville, we'll come.
Okay, we'll be at Gaylord.
There you go.
I'll fly to Nashville for your sake.
So are we back, wait a minute, are we back to?
We're gonna be back we'll just placehold the 4th as a placeholder, and guys, you know, and I'll throw a couple ideas out as well if we can, yeah, otherwise,
So you can't make it, but you're here?
I'm here.
Okay.
yeah,
Are you here, Connor?
The 4th, next 2 weeks from now?
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, my challenge is I'm dealing with my end-of-month stuff.
That's
and
all right,
so
that's
yeah,
all
that's
right,
it's
Mike's
tough.
busy.
Yeah,
Well, what about the 30th, just to put that out there? I mean, Joe will be gone, but John will be here, and I know Sid will be here then, the 30th, and so that's like a week and a half.
it's still for me as a conveyancing
Yeah,
attorney, that's tough. Especially take 2 hours out. And I'd like to have it at 10:30 so we can have it on
Well, anytime
LCAT.
works, right, I just,
Yeah, that's 2 hours, especially if we open it to beyond 2 hours, that's gonna be a challenge.
okay.
So let's just right now shoot for the 4th and
Here, in this
here,
room.
Yes.
and
Okay,
Next
and-
agenda as well.
Just
What's
one
that?
question.
you wanna add another thing to the agenda?
We
Wait,
still-
what, quick, Connor?
Either next week or at some point in the future, we still have to go over the table of uses, right?
Oh, we're not done
Oh,
yet.
yeah, we're not done yet. Oh, we're
Thank
not
you.
done, but thank you. One
Thank
thing
you.
I'm gonna ask,
That
I'm
is
just gonna
correct.
put a couple of assignments, if you will. I'm taking responsibility with Kathy's approval to talk to the town attorney on the question. I'll ask Ralph, if you don't mind, talking to George, trying to get his understanding of what was behind. And then Marilyn, if you don't mind, to at least try to summarize what you can in an editable word form. And you, just keep being,
Sid, go on
Sid,
vacation.
joy and tennis.
I bring
So-
some cowboy boots.
All right.
Bring us back a
So,
souvenir.
Mr. Chairman, back
Just
to,
quick,
Yes.
will we be seeing a draft at some point of what we've covered?
Right, we do have the minutes so far that hit every change that we have. We've just approved all 3 sets of minutes, but Marilyn's gonna try to work on putting it together in a form, and I'll be happy to share for review purposes as well. Okay?
And we're still up for discussion on the commercial and retail.
We are, that's gonna be, I also wanna talk about inclusionary housing too. All right, motion adjourned, motion made, seconded, any discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
See you
Thank
guys,
Thank
2
you, everybody.
weeks, the 4th, 10:30, here if this is available.